Welcome back to the morning show here on Tobago Updates Television, and thank you so much for staying with us. We begin conversations this morning by speaking with Inspector Mahalia Bacchus of the T.T.P.S, and this morning she is going to bring the crime updates for us as well as speak a little bit on the topic of the matter of suicide. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Adanna, and good morning to Tobago and the rest of our listening public.
Yes.
I'm happy to be here this morning.
Right, and it's always a pleasure, speaking with our members from the T.T.P.S as we have the conversations and they bring the information to us. We always like to know where we are in terms of activities on the island of Tobago. And we know so far we had a spur a couple months ago where things kind of seemed as if it was getting out of control. But for the most part, I believe it's been a little bit quiet. From our standpoint, but let us know a little bit as to what has been happening in terms of any activities of crime or apprehension or charges or anything that is happening there where that is concerned.
Okay, so Adanna, the T.T.P.S in the Tobago Division, we continue to work and the officers are out there working hard. It manifests itself as you see our presence on the outside continuously on a daily basis throughout the entire island, from Charlottesville to Crown Point. You could assure that you could see the police officers on the outside working in the Scarborough area as well too. So we have been doing, and we've been doing a lot. Just over the past week, I'm happy to report that the officers, we have a new intelligence unit on board and a combination of our CID divisional task force, and these officers led to the arrest of a male individual who is supposed to appear before the court today, charged with 2.9 kilograms of marijuana on the Scarborough port. So this is part of our efforts to stem the flow of drugs between our local or ports of call within Trinidad and Tobago. So I'm pleased to report that this morning we were also having a few reports of break-in, particularly in the Shervan district, which is like the Switzerland, Mount Pleasant area. And we were able to arrest two males, three of which are juveniles, who are also would also appear before the court, hopefully between today and tomorrow, charged for several of these house breakings and larcenies in that space as well. So the officers are out there working. We continue to focus on our drug block exercises. You will see us doing our raid and searches. There are persons who would also have received tickets on the roadway for infractions, not obeying the rules on the roadway as well too. So we are out there. We are doing what we are supposed to do, and we remain focused and resilient towards achieving our objectives and our goals in the T.T.P.S, in the Tobago space.
And, of course, it's always happy to hear when there's an arrest. And we're always happy to hear when charges will be laid and, stuff like that, because at the end of the day, we want to live in a space that is safe and that is peaceful and that we could all enjoy. You don't want to be walking down the streets and looking over your shoulder and wondering who is walking behind me. Funny I said that is that I think I had a moment like that over the weekend. I was walking and there was somebody behind me and something fell from them, and it made me, I was startled a little bit, but it was just a young guy walking and he had a water bottle in his hand and it fell from him. So, getting us back to a place where we don't have to feel that type of way is very, very important. And I do want to lend the support to the T.T.P.S and all the other agencies who are, working towards ensuring crime reduces on the island of Tobago so that we can have a safe space. We want to attract visitors. We want to attract tourists. We want the economy to come back to where it was. And we don't want here to be contaminated with situations of crime.
So true.
Right. And so the topic this morning is we're talking about suicide in Trinidad and Tobago, and specifically in the Tobago space. I want to talk a little bit about, from your perspective and your experience when having to do investigations, what are some of the causes that kind of leads towards the act of suicide?
All right. So first of all, I would like to explain suicide is actually more defined as death caused by self-harm, or if you have the intention, because some persons attempt to also commit suicide and probably it's thwarted before the actual act is carried out. But the idea is the goal of dying. The person intends to harm themselves, to die, right? So some of the things that we have to look at, we have to pay attention to our family, our loved ones, our friends as well too, because there are people who silently cry out for help, and we fail to observe or to understand, because body language sometimes it carries a lot. without without words being said. People say a lot through how they conduct themselves or the things that they do, and sometimes we fail to observe where a person is actually depressed. So sometimes severe depression is one of the signs that you could observe. The person might when he reach to a point where they have sleeping disorders, they're unable to function properly, that kind of thing. Also you find people withdrawing themselves socially, recluse. They end up not mixing, they're not going out anymore, and if that's not the stance that they had before, then obviously it's a sign that something is wrong. So we have to look at that. People being stressed out a lot, and worrying over, minor things. There are some people who also, they speak about the suicide. They speak about trying to kill themselves to persons, and it is ignored. Some people take it for granted that they're just probably saying something and like, shut them out, that kind of thing. But they actually tell you that is what they're going to do. And some people carry out the act. There are some people who put it in writing as well too, right? We have social media. If you take a look at some people's status, sometimes it's quite alarming what they may put up. I'm fed up of this life. They might be making a threat to actually harm themselves. It is important that we see these things and actually reach out to the individual, speak to them. Whilst as police officers, we are not medical practitioners, we are not certified psychiatrists or anything like that. But when you observe these things, if it is reported to us or we see somebody in this condition, we could actually assist in probably doing a referral, because we would have been called to homes already where people lock themselves away in a bathroom or in some situation, and you have to go try to talk them out of it. So if you realize the extent of it or what they would have done, maybe cutting themselves, that kind of thing, you actually have to try to get a referral done so that this person can get some help before it reaches to the point where they actually commit the suicide.
And is there a branch or a section or department in the T.T.P.S that deals specifically with this type of situation? I know there's a community police, I know there are different arms, but is there a specific division or a department that deals with this type of situation where you might get a call or you might be in a meeting, you observe some type of behavior? I know you said you're not medical practitioners, of course, but I know that you have special types of training. So is there a department that deals with this specifically?
We don't have a specific department, because the call may come to an officer who is working in a charge room area and he has to respond. But if it comes to the point where there's a referral or there's somewhere that some officers, like within the community policing space, might have some training in counseling. Even some of them in the charge room space and all may have been trained, but that it might be basic. And if you're talking about suicide, you're looking at a person reaching to an extent where it is drastic. So at that point, you need a professional on board. So we will try to refer the person probably to the social services department, where you have an actual a certified medical practitioner or psychiatrist attached there, who could provide that assistance to the person. If we receive a phone call, we could also do the referral, but encourage the person to use the hotline, right? Because there are suicide hotlines in Trinidad and Tobago that a person could call, and you will meet a trained person on the other line who could probably guide them through and get them some help before it reaches to the stage where they actually commit the act.
And as I mentioned before, I know there are different types of police, like, for instance, community policing. What are some of the things that you do to support persons who have those tendencies? Let's say, for instance, you're doing observations. You might observe something happening in a social media space, or you might observe something, let's say the police youth club. You might realize that something is taking place there. What type of support or action does the police take when they realize, listen, we need to, whether it is to resolve a conflict or whether it is to provide support to the family, whether it is to have, whatever it is, how do you, outside of a referral, how do you kind of combat or kind of put that measure of support for that person or that group of persons who might be leaning towards those types of tendencies?
All right. So just as you said, it depends on the stage at which this is. So I'm saying if it is something that is already drastic, we wouldn't try to be the person trying to say I'm helping you directly, because we would not be able to. But if it's something that you just observe the sign, as you said, we could probably get into that home. And as I mentioned, the same community policing officers, you could look at what is probably the issue, because suicide has no age group or age limit. Anybody can. I know of a case where there was a young man. For today, he has been he's still like in a vegetable state, because he tried to commit suicide, and remember, lack of oxygen to your brain, it could damage your brain and so on. So it left him in that state for today, and he's a mere child. So it could affect anyone. And in a case like that, you could go into the home to probably look at and assess to see what the situation really is, what would have caused the child to really reach to the stage of or wanting to speak about the suicide, to write about it, to put something like that on their status. What is really going on, right? It could be something happening in the school space. Recently, we saw where the bullying caused the young man to take his own life. So you have to find sometimes the root cause of what is happening. And if we can intervene within that space, which does not require like deeply professional, then we will try to put systems in place and see how best we could help the individual.
And as you're talking about that, when like, for instance, for vulnerable age groups, what type of advice would you give to persons who are responsible for younger people, like parents or guardians or teachers? You're talking about the signs that they will show, they will change their behavior. They might become more, a recluse. They might not be talking as much or outgoing as much. What are some of the things, in wrapping this conversation, would you want to advise the parents or the guardians or the teachers to pay attention to our the vulnerable groups of people in the society, to ensure that they have the measure of support in the event they feel a little volatile or they feel fragile in their emotions, or that they have that support and they know that somebody is there caring for them, and that all is not lost and there is a way to recover from the way they feel at that point in time.
So what I would advise is that it is important, especially if you are supervising persons, to really get to know them, to understand their behaviors, their patterns, what they do, what they would not do, and really try to understand if a child is being rebellious, what could be the possible reasons that this child could be behaving this way. If they are drawing stuff, if they are writing stuff, as I said before, what could be the root cause? Where is this coming from? If you have not seen this behavior before, where has it suddenly come from? So something could be troubling this child, and it may be important that you could probably have a conversation. A lot of schools now have guidance counselors attached to them. So as a teacher, you could probably have the guidance counselor come on board to have a conversation with the child to see really what's going on, because they would be actually trained to actually do an assessment to see what stage the child is at and how much help they will need. So if it is observed at an early stage, then intervention can be done pretty much early and could prevent the person or the child or so to from going down that road of actually committing suicide.
Very, very important, of course, to pay attention to the people around us. Sometimes we really take things for granted. In your opening, you did mention that sometimes somebody might actually tell you that they're going to do it. And based on our culture, we say, you're talking nonsense, relax yourself, when somebody really is going through it. So we really need to provide those spaces where people are free to speak and express themselves, and also to lend that measure of support.
And listening, to listen as well too.
Actively listen and take action to, what is being said or even not said sometimes. In closing, are there any closing points you want to share with our viewers this morning?
Well, for sure, Adanna, we are fast approaching the Christmas season. So I'm appealing to persons on the outside for us to be a bit more mindful of our environment, our home space, how we secure our homes. This is still a problem in Tobago. People have stuff exposed, right? The brush cutters and so on. And I'm also appealing to the general public. There are persons might be going around asking you to purchase items, and you know that they don't have the means or so to even buy this to sell it back to you. It is not a new item, and there are people who are buying it from them. All right. So I'm asking persons, when you come across people who are trying to sell you a television, a brush cutter, a game, a laptop, and it does not belong to them, please contact the police. Because if it is that you are found with a stolen item, you yourself can be prosecuted for having these items in your possession. So I'm appealing to the general public in Tobago when this information comes to you and persons are trying to sell you these hot items, please contact the police.
That's right. That's right. You don't want to spend that festive season in a place where you might not get some ham and sorrel, you know. Seriously though, it's something that you really need to pay attention to, because there are a lot of persons out there who are trying, you know, to be mischievous at that time of the year. So safeguard your property and also report any infractions you might see happening in your communities. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking with Inspector Mahalia Bacchus from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Services, bringing for us the crime updates here on the island of Tobago and speaking on the matter of suicide and how to identify when someone is going through something and the measure of support you can lend to them as well. Thank you so much for staying with us up until now, but we have to go for a short break before we continue conversations here in studio. And as we go, we invite you to help us. Share the live, share the live, share the live. We'll be right back.